Morning, Travis.
It's a
Morning.
beautiful. It's a beautiful morning.
Yeah. We were rose Travis out of bed by texting him and saying we're going to be on in 3 minutes. This is what Travis looks like when he's and sounds like when he's been up for 3 minutes to do the show. So it goes to show you that we rarely have any script or idea, and that definitely is the truth today. And producer Dan asked me a minute ago of what would I tell my 18-year-old self about the future in pursuing baseball, whether that be as a player, whether that be as a coach. Obviously, I even in college, Travis, and I was an okay player. I was like, an all conference at a mid-major. Not good enough to get drafted. And I always knew, even like as a sophomore, as a junior, I always thought I was going to be a way better coach than I was going to be a player, just by the way I processed the game. And as I got older in more of a leadership role on my collegiate team, helping out the freshmen and kind of showing them the way. It was just kind of who I was, and I was always excited about that next chapter in my career. But if I had to tell my 18-year-old self something, and it kind of goes back to the push and pull, ebb and flow of the way hitting especially is taught today. And when I played and when you played, my mom, as many of you listeners have heard, was really my only coach. I lived in the sticks. I got to go to maybe a baseball camp a year. Travis, it sounds like you had a similar background. I got to go to a camp a year. And even in those camps, it doesn't mean that you're getting fed good information, but it was better information than what I was getting in my small hometown, where the only instruction I really got was whatever I got off TV by watching games. So I recall the drills that I was doing being extremely short, steep downhill to the ball. I'm going to make my swing as short as possible, because you heard the pros on television talking about, I'm going to take my hand straight down to the ball. I'm going to chop wood. And I distinctly remember being really, really good. And again, I had a tunnel, I had a cage, and I would do the 2T drill, and I would put the back tee just about, 2 inches above the front tee, but I'd also just space them out about 6 inches apart. So I had to enter the zone super steep and downhill, but off of a tee, a non-moving object, and something I had time and space to practice over and over again. I could backspin that ball to the back of the cage really easily, like boom, line drive, boom, line drive. I was really good at the 2T drill. However, I have said this on the podcast too. I was 6'2", 200 pounds. I could run. And I honestly believe, and I know they don't keep this stat, I had to have led Division I baseball in infield hits. I had to have. Because I hit 360 my senior year. I had a lot of hits. But my ISO, slug, or power numbers would have been awful. I probably hit 8 doubles, 3 triples, and 5 home runs. Mind you, using -5 bats, which are just like steroids in your hand, right? So I think that didn't work for me. I pound the ball on the ground, and I knew if I could make the shortstop move 2 steps in either direction, I was going to be safe. But that doesn't work in pro ball, right? Which is why I didn't move on. So I literally took what pros would consider good instruction to the detriment of my future career. Now, I had immediate team success. That was the role of my team: get on base, steal bases, and let the big guys hit home runs. And we were second in the nation that year behind LSU in home runs per game. We hit a ton. And myself and our other middle infielder were the only 2 in our lineup that didn't have double-digit home runs. So when I think now of the way that people get upset about what is being taught, is the context of what you are taking literally and what you're taking as a swing thought. Because there are certainly, in the majority of guys in professional baseball that I have dealt with, it is extremely prevalent to hear around the cage, I think about swinging straight down, hammering down, getting on top of the ball. The difference between me, of what I did literally, and what these guys do, is the way I entered the zone the same way as a professional swing thought. The difference was I continued a negative attack angle through the zone versus successful professionals tend to enter that steep downhill thought and then turn their barrel under the ball for a positive attack angle. So my thought in this, and a question for you, Travis, is how cues can be completely different in their outcome and how that can ultimately determine success or failure for a player. You have any insight on that or similar cues that you can think of?
I think it's one of those things, like, again, we all hear different things. When I was coming up in the games before I was 18, my dad was my, I guess, biggest influence as a coach, because that's who I would get working with. We'd drive over to a little hole in the wall in Green Bay to hit baseballs off of a pitching machine. And I remember in the facility we were in, or the place we were in, it wasn't a facility. There was literally just batting cages. There was like 4 or 5 batting cages in there, and each one of them was a different speed. Like the slowest one might have been like 50, the next cage over was 60, and then 70, 80, 90 was the fast cage. And the cue that I got all the time from my dad was basically, if I couldn't pull the ball, that the pitch was too fast for me and I wasn't quick enough. So what got built into my swing was basically trying to stay connected so I could get to the ball out front so that I could pull the ball. But it also led, like for me, it led to me cutting off my swing a lot, trying to chase hitting a ball right down the third baseline. So when I'm talking pull the ball, like my cue was hit every ball down third base. And I, as you did, I got really good at it. Like I was really good at hitting like every ball right down third baseline, whether it was just a double down the line because I hit the ball right over third base, or a line drive caught by third base, or a ball over the fence right down the line. And that worked out for probably my 10, 11, 12, probably even a little bit of my 13, carrying a little bit into my 14-year-old year. Worked out relatively well. Guys didn't locate pitches well. Nobody was going to throw hard enough at that point to get it past me because I was an okay athlete enough. And guys didn't throw off speed, or couldn't control off speed. So I had quite a bit of success. I mean, I was on, growing up, every all-star team and everything else like that, just simply because I could hit every ball right down the line. And once I got to high school, I made the jump early on to varsity. And the pitching extremely changed extremely quickly. And there was struggles, I would say, for the first time. Like I still hit okay, but it wasn't like the success I was having. And I didn't change my mindset much. So again, going back to what you were saying, like my cue is always like pull the ball, and pull the ball in my mind. Like there was no, like, this is how you pull the ball. It wasn't like, hey, get closer to the plate and make everything feel like it's inside, so you have to catch it out front. I probably had still in the same neutral position. And as we all know, most pitchers don't throw the ball inside at the high school, college, or
even pro, for that matter,
or even at the pro level that much. Right. So I wasn't getting a lot of inside pitches, and I was in more of a neutral position in the box. So there was probably, in my mind, what felt tight was probably a longer swing, but it felt tight because I was trying to pull the ball. And, when you're growing up, if you pull the ball, it means that it was an inside pitch. So I might have told myself mentally that I was hitting inside pitches, because like what was the standard, put the tee even with your belt buckle when we were growing up, when you're trying to hit an outside pitch. It was like, all right, we're going to let that ball get really deep, like put it off your back hip and hit its right field, which is completely terrible in thought as well. But, made you learn how to create space. So you could use that one as a cue too, of like, us, doing outside pitches now with kids is, probably more out with the front ankle, or, even near the front foot, and just letting the barrel kind of do the work a little bit more out front, and what would feel out front, because it gives you time, in essence, to be down and still have space to turn behind even an away pitch. But us putting it off our back hip taught us how to create space, how to not move forward, how to stay into essentially your backside longer, because you couldn't drift, you couldn't slide your hips. You couldn't do anything and hit that pitch that was even with your back hip anywhere near fair or with any sort of relevant power. So
You'd actually have to spin
those things like it's
time to get to that ball.
Yeah. Well, and then you'd get in practice, coach like, let it get to that point back there, and you're like, I can't hit it fair. I don't know how to get to it. And you'd catch it a little.
I'm working on getting better at catcher's interference.
You'd catch it a little bit deeper than you normally would, but you wouldn't catch anywhere near that deep. But I think honestly, I think regionally, there's lots of different cues, just like based on the population you grew up with and like how those people term baseball. You know, like we grew up relatively the same time learning baseball, but we had different cues, like because of the adults in our communities and their growth on baseball and what they were told. And everybody, I think, in different regions is told and does different things. So I think there's always that, you know, difference in cues. But yeah, for me, like I said, it was every ball I had to pull, and then, you know, practicing balls off the back hip to let it get deep.
Okay. Well, here's where I'm going with this, because every sport has its ebb and flow. I think my time as a football coach, and this was in the early 2000s, it was just the beginning of how, and college football really did this before pro football even, like, we're taking two backs out of the backfield. We're going to start to spread out. In high school sports, especially where you don't have maybe as good of quality linemen or skill guys, you can spread the defense out and create more holes. And then once defenses got spread out and they started running like 3-4s and like, oh, we're going to take advantage of this. We're going to bring everybody back in and we're going to jam the football down your throat. Power football, basketball did the same thing. You'd have like the 4 out, 1 in offense. And then as defenses started to come out onto the perimeter, then people started to stack underneath a little bit more. Baseball has done the same thing in terms of the swing. So we went from the literal and in like guys affected like me of saying, I was taught, we've had this conversation with Andy Haynes, you know, who has the same story. Like I was literally taught swing down. I was going to be the best in the world at. I was going to practice that till I couldn't practice anymore. My hands would bleed and I would continue a negative attack angle all the way through the zone. And so people our age, then you get into coaching, then social media gets involved and you have more of a voice and you can talk and influence more people. Then you got the swing up crowd, like, oh, that was effing stupid. These guys don't know what they're talking about. They're ruining careers. We've got to get the ball in the air. You got to swing up. And if you take that literally, then you have an epidemic of what we have today of a bunch of barrel dumpers, right? So you have the swing down literal crowd, the swing up literal crowd. And again, as we've said before, there's both moves that need to happen in the swing. A very steep descent into the zone, and then we need to turn the barrel under into a positive attack angle, which is properly done through body posture and tilt. So that ebb and flow that I think about, that argument of the swing up crowd is really why I feel like where we're at today with having to fix more barrel dumpers, because it wasn't that way 15 years ago, Travis. When we started teaching, there were way more pushers in steep swings. Like, how often do we see that coming into our cages today?
Yeah,
rarely. I hardly ever see anybody pushing the bat anymore. I see a ton of guys that dump.
The only guys that I'm seeing, the only guys that I see that are pushing are guys that have already had failure with barrel dump, and you know, somebody's told them, hey, you got to get to the ball, let's shorten it up, whatever it is, and then they come in a little bit more into that kind of push pattern. But other than that, like, not very much. But like the same ebb and flow obviously has happened in pitching. You know, like when I was first coming up, it was two seam this and sinker that and pitch to the bottom of the zone and don't miss up, you know, don't miss in the upper part of the zone. And it was,
that was a huge cue, right? Oh, don't mess it up. You're gonna get hammered there.
Well, but why? Because we had a lot of guys that were swinging in their minds in a more of a negative pattern, and that's less conducive to a ball sinking down that you're just constantly chasing. So you were searching for ground balls, and you're like, hey, if these guys are going to give us ground balls, or they're thinking ground balls or low line drives, like, let's let them do that and let's let them get themselves out versus letting them hit something over the infield. So it's like, all right, just sink the ball, let them beat it in the ground, and let's take you out. And even though you're going to give up some hits, like, you're going to give up less damaging hits. So it was like, well, if I give up 2 singles an inning, probably not giving up a run. You know, if I give up 2 doubles an inning, that's definitely a run. If I give up a single and a double, it could be a run. So it was like limiting as a pitcher, like, you know, we're all the way we are and the way we are approaching things as a pitcher too. But like most guys that I know that I've taught through the years, like as pitchers, like their only thought is still strike guys out. It's like, I'm going to strike this guy out. It would be like, hey, it's a 3-0 count. And in their mind, they're like, all right, it's going to take me 3 more pitches. And I'm like, why is it going to take you 3 more pitches? Well, I gotta get strike 1, and then after that, I gotta be able to get strike 2, and then strike 3. I'm like, why can't you just throw something here and get a ground ball and be out in 1 pitch? Unless the guy's not going to swing 3-0, which is obviously, you know, par for the course as it is. But then all of a sudden, you know, you probably started getting more guys that were dumping the barrel early, and the barrel was already headed towards the bottom of the zone, and they started catching some of these balls that were being sunk to the bottom of the zone. And then all of a sudden now where we're kind of at now is high spin rate at the top of the zone. And again, it's like, it's give and take. So as soon as this crowd goes now to more of a understanding, more direct, or feeling slightly down again, or being short to the ball, they're going to manage a little bit better at the top of the zone as time goes on. And as that happens, it's going to revert back to either sinker ball pitchers again, or it's going to revert back to, you know, even better understanding of how to tunnel pitches and be able to make hitters' decisions even harder to make with 4-seam up and something going down. So it's always going to go back and forth, and that's really the idea. So then as a pitcher hitter, as you're going into, like when I was in pro ball, you know, every time we would play a series, first thing we do is we'd go in and we'd have pitcher catcher meeting. So our coach would come in and give us an idea of the lineup that we were facing and what they had been good at or what they hadn't been good at based off of, you know, game numbers, previous times playing them. We'd pull out the pitching charts and be like, hey, here's how we threw, you know, this guy last series, and this seemed to work with, you know, this and that. And you'd sit there and look, okay, well, this guy tends to hit balls up. All right, well, let's work this guy down. This guy tends to pull off the ball or roll balls over. Let's go, you know, something softer away and let him, you know, just take it back. So, you know, you have those game plans and people have to go back and forth. And then it's the hitter's job to understand how people are pitching them and figure out a way to survive how guys are throwing them. And then as that hitter adjusts, then the pitcher has to readjust. And the person that can adjust the most rapidly or the most efficiently is typically the one that survives. And the one that can't make the adjustment, you know, whether it is the pitcher or the hitter. There's a lot of guys I know now that as we work, you know, spin rate and trying to get balls a little bit more up at the top of the zone, we're still working on getting balls down. We're still working on throwing 2-seam and sinkers, but a lot of these guys, because they've never thrown balls up in the zone, have no idea how to throw a ball up in the zone accurately. Everything either gets, you know, chin high or it gets driven right back down to the knees, and they have a really hard time living in the top part of the zone because for so long they've never tried to intentionally throw a ball there. And it's funny how you can throw a baseball your whole life and you tell somebody to do something differently with it, and if they're not like, man, I've never really thought that way. Like if somebody came to you in your senior year of college and said, here, hey, Justin, here's what's up, man. I want you to get there and then just turn behind this ball and go get it.
I would have thought they were crazy.
Well, but even if you thought they were crazy, you'd have been like, all right, I'm an athlete. I can pull this off. You would have felt really uncomfortable trying to make that happen because you had never really done it before, and trying to get yourself to do it, even though you could physically do it, would be mentally difficult because it was like, whoa. This is not my comfort zone.
Yeah, no doubt. I was, so while you were talking there, I was thinking of some other cues that I was plagued with that did not work for me. Now, mind you, I was a no stride hitter. And as most no stride hitters, you're going to have typically a compensating move in the upper body for the lack of energy drive from the lower body. So I had a big inward rotation of my torso. And the next cue that I got was you need to keep your front foot closed completely. And of course, mine wouldn't. And when you think about movement profiles, I had really tight internal rotation of my hips. So that wasn't going to work. My shoe would come dislodged. Or two, if you have a huge internal rotation of your torso, you have to clear space in your lower body. Your lower body is naturally going to open up more to clear that space. So my foot would be well more than a 45. It wouldn't be at a 90 to the pitcher, but we're probably talking 60, 65 degrees. And my coach would tell me, you have to stay closed. And so now I'm trying to fight my lower body with an internally rotated torso, trying to get my hands to the ball and clear space. And obviously that was like a train wreck and probably just leading to more 6-hole rollover ground balls, which was just a benefit of I was out athleting the ball at that point, just being faster than my crappy hits. But changing the subject a minute, I've watched Ted Williams' video for years. He has an interesting swing pattern because he has a major dump at the beginning of his swing. Like his hands are well above the barrel, like not even close. You can eyeball it and see it. And then I was thinking about, okay, if you have a major barrel dump, and if you're going to get to anything even waist high, which would be considered elevated, you have to catch it way out in front to get it in the air, like way out in front. So I don't know why it just didn't dawn on me till now that the reason why Ted Williams pulled everything is he had to have success. He had to, because his barrel wasn't going to get back on plane to that ball because of the massive barrel dump at the beginning of the swing till way out in front. Now, nobody told him that. What did he do? He figured it out naturally, like, oh, if I'm going to have success, I need to catch the ball way out in front. That's where I'm getting balls in the air, I'm hitting the balls hard, and thus the shift. Because he had no chance of hitting balls the other way because of what position that the barrel was in. I don't know why it took me 20 years of watching Ted Williams. Just that dawned on me this week. There's probably a lot of people out there going, Stoney, I already knew that. You're an idiot. And maybe I am.
I don't think so. I think that's one of those things too. Like, as you look at different things, we're not always connecting the dots. It was always like when we were growing up, it was like you were told different things and you take a lot of it for granted, and you're not sitting there trying to connect the dots. Like, why did a guy like Ted Williams pull the ball? Did he do it just because he was good at it, or did he do it because he needed to do it? Why do certain players back the ball up more? Why is that the way they are? Oh, well, this guy backs the ball up more because he internally rotates, and that, like, his swing direction, for him to be good, he either has to catch it way out front like Ted Williams, or he has to catch it a little bit deeper and try to go on a line, slightly opposite way. So they're going to hit more balls opposite field consistently because that's going to be
my whole spray chart would have been balls or right center field in the air, unless I cheated. Like, I could cheat and pull a ball, but I had to sell out and cheat to do it.
Right. And I was literally, that was the same with me because I had a huge inward turn, and like I could consistently, if I would just go to right field, I could consistently probably hit the ball well. I wouldn't hit with power, so I didn't want to hit the other way just because I never practiced it growing up. I practiced pulling the ball, and same thing. So I ended up having to catch the ball in front of me really far to get to that pull side. But it made me have to make decisions earlier. And, with my decision making must not have been great or whatever the case was, because, I'd be attacking breaking balls that were bouncing on the plate because out of hand, I was like, yep, that was starting close to where I wanted to be. And you'd commit early because I had to catch it out front. And then you'd be halfway through the swing going, oh, crap. That wasn't a fastball. But that was it. It was the give and take, right? Like we've talked about, to get the ball up front, you got to make a decision earlier, which means you're going to have to take a couple chances and you're going to make some bad decisions along the way. And that's exactly what my hitting career was. It was, if I guessed right, man, I was doing some good damage. If I guessed wrong, it probably looked like I haven't swung a bat in my life. They're like, wow, what's this guy doing? Like, he just swung at a ball that was a foot short of the plate and a foot outside the plate in the other batter's box, and he swung at it like full, but didn't swing at it like I was poking and reaching for it. Swung at it full speed like the ball was still thigh high down the middle of the plate. I might have.
He doesn't get cheated. He missed about 6 feet, but man, he doesn't get cheated. That's what I tell my daughter. I had her in the cage, and this is another transition part of the show. She's 9 years old, And the only instruction I've given her is swing hard. And she swings hard. Like she gets in there. But the other thing I told her in the cage the other day is I threw a couple bad flips underhand, and she goes, "Daddy, I'm swinging at everything." And I said, "Good. I want you to swing at everything. At this age, at 9 years old, I want you to get a feel of being able to hit anything and have some bat to ball skill and control." And I said, down the road, we will narrow in those decisions or what are balls and strikes. Now, that may not set her up for immediate success in a game where she goes out and just starts chucking at everything, because pitchers don't throw strikes at that age. And I've told her to swing at everything, but certainly in the cage, I want young hitters to have the feel of spatial awareness and can I get the barrel to the ball? I want to learn those bat to ball skills. Now, in our Twitter poll that we did about a month ago, producer Dan, we said, what do you value more if you could have one elite skill? Would it be decision making or bat to ball skills? And I too say bat to ball skills, and that one just slightly. So I'm putting this on Twitter universe. If my daughter is a failure now as a hitter, I'm blaming it on all of our listeners and all the people that follow me on social media, because I too said I'm going to teach her bat to ball skills before I do decision making.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna have to worry about that, because for everybody else out in the Twitter universe or your social realm that doesn't understand like how physical your daughter is doing CrossFit, and the things that she can probably physically do already as a human being that most kids her age can't do. Again, she will out physical the game long enough to let her be better skill specific. Let's say if we're gonna go like making decisions and like making better contact as opposed to, you know, just swing and go hit it hard. Like she's gonna buy herself time, and that's really where a lot of it comes into. And I'm gonna transition this back into both of these stories now. So you started talking out what Dan had said about what would you tell your 18-year-old self if you could go back and tell yourself, and then how that led into cues, and now kind of how we've been talking about how you can out athlete the game. Is growing up, I was one of the better ball players in my city. And it gives you a false sense of success when you're better than a lot of other people that aren't in the same mindset as you. And what I'm going to say with that is, like, when I was in high school, being a varsity player the majority of my high school life, being a middle of the lineup hitter the entire time I'm there, you know, I was comparing myself to the people that I was around, and the guys that played with are great people, man. Like, they were awesome friends and everything else like that, but none of them played college baseball. So I'm competing against people that had other thoughts in mind or weren't like-minded sometimes in the way I was going about what I was doing. So me feeling like a little bit of a better player in those moments, getting to college was a huge awakening for me. Like, I left high school thinking like I'm on top of this, like I'm gonna play baseball forever. And I got to college, and immediately I was like, wow, man, like almost everybody here is faster than me. Almost everybody here is stronger than me. Almost everybody here can do things that I can't do yet. And I remember going in there being like in shock of how much I felt behind, literally a week after, you know, finishing up in the summer with my buddies and feeling like I'm so far ahead. So I got to college, and it was just like immediate just battle. It was battle mode trying to catch up. Like, I didn't get to play that much as a freshman because honestly I wasn't good enough. And I was at a pretty good school. I was at Madison Area Tech. They were the 3-time defending national champions the year I'm heading in there. So they'd won three national championships in a row. We were ranked number 1 in the country.
Coach, because I feel like he was an old Sox scout. That
Leo Kalinowski.
Oh, not the guy I was thinking.
And we were number 1 in the country the entire year I was there. And then we were number 1 in the country for a reason. Like, there was a lot of good players on that team. But again, I remember going there being like, I had to spend more time in the weight room. I had to catch up to these guys strength-wise. I had to catch up to these guys even a lot of ways, skills wise and consistency wise. And then, as my college, eventually I transferred out, went to North Central after my 2 years at Madison Area Tech. Went to North Central, and it was kind of the same thing. Like, as I was leaving North Central, in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm ahead of where I need to be. Like, I'm stronger than a lot of my friends, a lot of the guys that I'm playing college baseball with. Obviously I left, I went in as a catcher, left as a pitcher. And then it was like time for pro ball. And then I remember, this was back in our White Sox Academy days, back when I still worked in the Lyle facility. And I remember getting in there and having all these other pro athletes there that were training there. And there was a ton, man. And we had probably 20, 25 guys there that would train, not all at the same time or not all in the same days, but there's probably about 20, 25 guys intermixed from every level, from big league guys to, minor league guys to independent guys to even guys that were playing overseas. And I remember then watching these guys and like watching them going through their throwing. And like one of the guys there was Braden Looper. And I remember watching Braden Looper throw a bullpen and just going, what in the heck have I gotten myself into? Because I'm like, I can't do anything that dude's doing right now. I can't do. I can't throw that hard. I can't locate the ball that well. My secondary is not that.
And you weren't 6'5" and 235 pounds.
I understand, but like my secondary is not there. Like I got none of this stuff. And then we would
for a reason.
Well, but then we'd go after we did our throwing and all of our stuff on the turf, we'd go and work out. And then I watched, Looper and these guys work out and be like, holy crap, all these guys are stronger than me again. And I left college thinking I was strong. So the point of that was like going back and telling my 18-year-old self is, I want to say almost like enough isn't enough. Like you're not competing just against the people you see on a daily basis. Like you're competing against everybody everywhere. And I think it's different now. And this is literally where the showcase has now made it available because of social media, is because if you jump on, you can know what all the best 8th graders on the planet are doing. You can know exactly what all the best freshmen in high school and freshmen in college, and because anybody can post these videos of how they hit and how hard they can hit and how hard they can throw and what their spin rate is on their breaking ball at, a 15-year-old level. And you're looking at it, it's going like, you know now, if you're on social media, you know what you're competing against. And growing up, I didn't know, because like we said, like I got to watch maybe like one game of baseball if it wasn't a Brewers game, because there was nothing really off market that was in my area played. Like you didn't get to watch a ton of different teams. You didn't get to watch tons of different games because they weren't always televised. So you saw what you could see in the limited time you could see it. There was no, ESPN growing up early on in my life to be able to watch highlights of people playing. That didn't happen until a little bit later. So, not knowing what I was competing against, I was just like, oh, okay, well, if I'm better than the group that I'm with right now, or I feel like I'm in that group, you thought you were in a good spot. And I think if I could go back, it would be, I don't feel like I took it easy, like once I got to a certain point, but I feel like I didn't realize what I was competing against. And I think the issue with a lot of kids now is that they see other kids they're competing against, but a lot of kids I talk to them, I'm like, man, who's your favorite big league player? They're like, I like the Cubs. I'm like, oh, you got a favorite player on the Cubs? And they like the Cubs because they see their parents wearing Cubs gear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when's the last, like, how many games do you watch a year? Oh, we go to about 3 games a year. I said, all right, that's cool. Like, how many games do you watch on TV? I don't really watch baseball on TV. And I'm sitting here going like, well, how are you going to know what you're competing against if you don't see it played at its highest form, to know the speed of the game, to know the physicality of these human beings, to know all those things? Like, how do you really know? So if
travel kids too. It is so good today that college baseball is on as soon as the NCAA basketball tournament's over. College baseball is on TV all the time. And that's so good that it's transitioned that way, because we'd say that to our travel guys. Like we had also a plague in our program at the beginning of being sick from our own success, where our first couple classes, everybody was a Power 5 Division I player. So it came that kids would just put on our uniform and say, well, I'm going to go to a Power 5 school. And their parents would think the same thing too. This is what I'm signing up for. And then you knew this was going to happen. Like there was a certain players, well, we're holding out for Mississippi. Well, Mississippi has no interest in you, right? You're better suited for Division II baseball, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I was like, have you watched what Power 5 college baseball looks like? Like, can you watch that and say, yeah, I can see myself fitting in there right now? Because that's essentially the way recruiting is right now. Like, I shouldn't say that. Like, there's some schools that super early recruit and then have the option to decide whether they're going to hold through with that commitment or not at the very end. But there's a majority of schools that say, if we're recruiting you, we feel like you could fit in right now, right? And we've seen that. If you're not watching the game, as you just said, Travis, you have no idea how good these players are. Like, if you just watched Vanderbilt these past 2 weekends, you got dudes like chucking 97, 98.
Everybody is.
Everybody, yeah.
Every one of their guys. Like, no, but that's what I'm saying is I think like that's where like a lot of that came is like if I would have known what I know now, it would have been take out some of the additional stuff that I probably didn't need to do to get done what needed to be done. And there's no ill will, man. Like I always tell people, like I enjoyed the heck out of my baseball ride, and I enjoyed the fact as far as I ended up being able to play, and I'm not upset, and I don't blame being done on anybody else. And honestly, like knowing what I know now, like going back, like I still don't know that I'd want to change. Like, I mean, there's so many things that happen in your life that you would have to change with it to change another thing. And like, I got an opportunity to get paid to play baseball. You know what I mean? But again, like as younger kids are coming up now, like if I could give them some advice, it would be watch the game at a higher level. Like for these high school kids, honestly, like go watch a college game. Like you're looking to go to, like everybody wants to play pro ball. Most people have no shot of playing or getting drafted out of high school. It is so incredibly difficult, especially with the draft being cut down at this point. Like to get signed out of high school that doesn't mean don't make that a long-term goal for you. Like if that's what you want.
It's harder and harder to get into pro baseball.
But I'm saying, but that's really hard. So what I'm saying is like your first step is to watch where your next logical progression is probably going to be, and that's college. Go watch, and not only that, but I'll tell you this: go watch smaller baseball too. Like I'm gonna give a shout out to my alma mater. Like go watch North Central baseball. It's a Division III program. You know, right now they're ranked number 3 in the country in Division III. You go watch them play and ask yourself if you can fit in there. Because here's the thing, man, like the game at that level isn't incredibly different. It's just typically slightly less consistent. So you're getting a lot of still good athletes. I mean, there's
probably some like a lot of good late bloomers, like good upperclassmen in Division II and Division III baseball.
I believe
North Central out late, but you're competing against men, right? They're men.
I believe there's a guy at North Central right now that as a pitcher, I think he's like low to mid 90s. You're talking about a Division III player. You know what I'm saying? And that doesn't mean like, you know, most people are like, oh, well, then he must just not be able to pitch well. It's not always the case, man. Like it's not what it is. Like you said, it's like put yourself in a situation where you can be successful, you know, and sometimes for some other people that's going somewhere different. But what I'm saying again is if you're a high school kid, it is so easy. There are so many colleges in your neighborhood that are very easily to get to. And I don't know if the colleges are allowing spectators at this point. So, you know, it might be different from being able to do something like that. But realistically, you know, try to watch every level. Try to watch Division III. Go try to see some JUCO baseball. Go watch pro baseball. Watch every level. And like you said, see where you fit in. And if you're like, man, some of these guys can really fly, then get yourself out there and get yourself running faster. Whether you have to be stronger so you can run faster, whether, you know, you have to create better rate of force production, whatever it is, then go get faster. If you can't throw the way that those infielders are throwing across the diamond, get out and work on throwing better. You know, if you can't pick it as well, then get more ground balls, get harder hop. Well, but you got to know what you need to practice. It's not just it's not just going on a field. I get so many kids when they come in, every kid that comes into my cage, the first thing I always ask them is always like, hey, what do you need today? Meaning like, hey, you've had another week of team practice or whatever else you're in. Like, what do you need from me today? Like, what do you got? I still want to work on this. All right, cool. Let's still target that. Here's where we left off on that. Let's stick there. Sometimes they change and they're like, hey, I want to go a little bit more this route today because I was, in practice, whatever. The majority of kids I ask them, like, hey, how did your week go in baseball? Like, what did you do? What did you get through? Like, oh, we had practice. I'm like, okay, what'd you do in practice? Like, what are you getting better at in practice? Are you just taking ground balls, but not knowing what you're actually supposed to be? Like you feel like your glove isn't good, but it's because your footwork is terrible. Okay, well, are you actually working on your footwork, or are you just trying to make the ball go in your glove? Like what I'm saying is like the understanding of not just practice, but like a specific mindset in a practice of what you can and can't do well. And I think that's where a lot of it's lost. Like guys go and hit BP and they're just hitting BP. They're not worrying about like, hey, like I get beat with speed. Hey, can you move up when you're throwing me BP and make it shorter and a little bit firmer so I can work through some things I have to work through? They just take standard BP. And then you go out in a game and you wonder why you're getting beat because you never address the issue because you're not thinking about the issue in practice because you're just going through a standard practice. And your issue isn't, can you barrel a slow pitch? Because yes, you're very good at barreling a slow pitch, but you can't barrel it
through incorrect training.
Right. And again, if your footwork's bad and you're an infielder and that ball gets hit, the odds of you getting to it successfully are going to go down, which means you're not going to make as many plays as you would believe in your mind you should make. And you're going to kick a few more balls than you would because you're just taking ground balls in practice. You're not practicing your angles. You're not practicing the tempo of your footwork. As a pitcher, you're out there going, hey, we're throwing bullpens. Let's try to, whatever. And then it becomes, hey, you're throwing just for speed and you're inaccurate. And then you're like, okay, well now I get in a game and I can't pitch like that. But now you haven't pitched trying to, take down some of your speed to try to be accurate. Now you can't throw strikes or, guys get obsessed with breaking balls. Like, I want to throw this, coach, I want to go to my breaking ball. I'm like, bro, you can't even control your fastball right now. Like you can't, what count are you going to get to throw this curveball because you can't get ahead? Like, are you going to pitch backwards and you're just going to throw all curveballs? Is that what you think is going to happen right now? Because you can't throw your curveball for a strike enough to do that either. So it's like you go through these things and say, watch the game, man. Like even at the highest level, even against the best hitters on the planet, there are still more first pitch fastballs than there are off speed. And yes, that number might be getting closer. Like more guys like, hey, I got to start guys off with something that's not a fastball. But it's still majority is going to be fastball. Now, it might be fastball up. It might be something with sink. It might be on a corner. It might be whatever. It might be something with a cut, whatever it is. But watch the game and then dedicate practice that way. And kids have to understand this too. And this is why I don't coach teams or I don't like to coach teams is it is really hard as a coach, even with an assistant coach, to have 12 to 15, let's say at the travel side or the high school side, 25. It is hard in a practice to get dedicated practice for 25 players when you have two coaches to 3 coaches. So what do you have to do? You have to have a very generalistic practice, which is not going to benefit a lot of these kids, but it's not the coach's fault. Yeah. Because there's no way you're
managing time and rest.
Yes, there's no way you can't get done what every kid needs. There's just not enough time or manpower. So the thing is, kids need to be able to walk into those scenarios. And if the coach is hitting ground balls, the kid needs to know, okay, I'm going to actually start a little bit more to the right because I'm really bad at going to my left. So instead of taking ground balls at me, or instead of like just taking standard field the ball, throw it to first, I'm going to put myself in a situation. And I might have to ask my coach, hey man, do you mind if I set up here so I can work a little bit more to this side? And he might tell me no, but I'm going to ask that question because I know that's what I need. I specifically know in a game, if the ball goes there, I'm in trouble unless I get this work in. And I think that's what's also tough. So as kids, kids need to learn to speak up. They need to be able to tell their coaches what they're thinking and what they're feeling and what they need help with or whatever, and then see how they can work that into a practice. Because a lot of these kids, the only practice they get in is team practice. Because a lot of kids aren't doing individual practice. When I mean individual, I don't mean even lessons. I mean even just going in their garage. Like so many kids, I'm just going to go in the garage and hit off the tee. Well, that's great, but what are you doing? You just put every kid wants the ball like middle thigh high. They come in the cage when they come in for lessons, like, hey, can we raise the tee? I'm like, this tee is as low as it can go, and it's still probably 4 inches above your knee, which is still well above the bottom of the zone. Where do you want it? You want every ball like not like top of the zone, but not bottom of the zone, just right in the middle, and you're just going to sit and whack 50 balls a day doing that because nobody's trying to throw the ball there. And so again, you're getting swings in, and you feel like you're being productive, but in a lot of ways, you're not. You're not working on time to impact. You're not working on approach angles. You're not working on posture. You're just working on how hard can I hit this ball right down the middle. And look, man, I got an hour of practice in this week or 2 hours of practice. I'm like, well, what did you do? What did you do? Like everybody could do the same thing. You're not working on getting better. Sorry, that was like I just went off on I got excited there.
Preach, brother, preach. Oh, that was great, Travis. I'm going to finish it up with this. Another thought from the week that I actually stopped and pulled these 2 pro hitters aside. They've been training all off season and minor league players. And like every session, the machine is, again, we have a digital machine. It's pretty state of the art. It's a little different. So you can program any spin rate and velocity into it and just by a touch of a pad. So there's not a session that goes by that the machine doesn't end up above, not even above 100 miles an hour. And these guys look really comfortable. And I pulled them aside. I said, when I finished playing in 1998, if you'd have told me, I don't think, first of all, we had a machine that went 100 miles an hour in 1998. I said, if you'd have told me that 20 years or 15 years later, how many years, whatever, 20 years later, simple math, Justin.
That's not even right. But
20 years later that we would be training comfortably at over 100 miles an hour, I would have looked at you like, you're insane. Because I remember at the end of this era and into the 90s in Division I college baseball, I would think like, oh, this guy's throwing above 90. Like I got to strap it on today. Because, I mean, the game then was played at 87 to 89 typically. And even your outliers were above 90. And we're training above 100. So I had this high school kid, one of the better 2022s in the country, comes in after the pro guys work out, and they overlapped one day this week. And this is the second time we've done it. But I've got a high school, 2022, that's training on the machine alongside these guys at over 100 miles an hour. Like, wow, game's really hard right now. And you get from practice, you better prepare them for it being hard.
I had that conversation in my velocity class yesterday. We were sitting back there talking, and I said, I have been fortunate enough to have been around some really good kids. The amount of kids, high school kids that I have seen now throughout the years that throw above 90 is wild to me. I left high school. I by the way, I'd never thrown for a radar gun in high school because there weren't radar guns around. They weren't readily available. There weren't pocket radars and all these different things. And even then, like schools didn't have radar guns. There was never, the only way you'd see a radar gun is if you went to like a major league scouting bureau camp, which I don't even think they do anymore.
The open trials, those were cool. I don't think they exist anymore.
Yeah. But I remember going to college, and the first time I threw for a radar gun, because remember I was a catcher still at this point, but I was like, I want to see how fast I throw. So I got on the mound after they have to do they had to do tryouts based off, I believe, college rules. Like you had to have an open tryout or whatever. And so we'd always have guys that would try out, and the guys that were on the team would just sit and basically run the tryout and let the coaches just kind of watch. It's like, I'm gonna go throw off the mound. I remember the first time I threw for a radar, I was a freshman in college, and this is probably, second week of fall, whatever it was. And the hardest I could throw was 85. 85, bro. And I felt leaving high school, I was one of the harder throwers in my area. And when it said 85, I was like, I wasn't disappointed, but I was like, all right. Now, man, like I've seen 14-year-olds throw 90, like that I physically have been with, like around. And I just go like, it's wild to me. I didn't see one kid in high school throw 90. Not one single kid my entire high school life did I ever face or even know that I personally knew that threw 90. Not one. And then now to watch it now, it blows my mind to watch what some of these kids can do. That I'm like, they're so far. Like kids now that throw 85 in high school are panicked about finding a place to play baseball.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like I touched 85 when I was a freshman in college, and I ended up throwing relatively hard later on. But it's so hard to try to explain to kids that I got kids. Heck, I got kids right now that are throwing 88, 89 looking for a home. You know what I mean? And they're just like, man, it's hard out there. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It is hard out there, and recruiting is harder now, anyways, because of all what went down with COVID and all the rules and people being able to
Who
get
has
extra.
benefited from COVID? One group of coaches, junior college baseball. The amount of bounce backs, like junior college baseball is never going to be as talented as what it's going to be in the next couple of years. Like if you're a JUCO coach, man, life's good. I would think. I mean, they might call me up and say, Stoney, we're dealing with all these issues that I'm not aware of. And that could be true. But I would think that the talent pool going with the draft being cut down and the amount of bounce backs that are going to come from Division I baseball, man, JUCO baseball is going to be good.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I got today. We went for about an hour there, Coach Travis. Next week, I'll be coming to you from sunny Arizona.
I'm excited for you, man. Excited for you to get down there and get to work.
Yeah, it's time. Producer Dan, appreciate it. You want to give a shout out to our sponsors this week?
He's like, nope.
I'm gonna get actually a purposeful moment of silence because we have no sponsors.
I'm gonna give a shout out to producer Dan for being quite possibly the coolest damn travel coach on the planet. Bro shows up to practice last night with an actual like WWE like leather belt with just big metal.
Yeah, you need to tweet that out on the Elite TV Twitter handle.
Saying Elite coming in, kids all getting hyped because they all want to win the belt because every kid, whoever player of the practice or the game gets to take the belt.
Let's say, how do you win the belts? Player of the game, they got to keep it till the next game. Cool.
Kids were jacked up, man. I was taking videos, like I'm in my lesson, like telling my lesson, like, hold on a minute, I got to take a video of what's going on over here. This is wild. These guys are all just getting crazy. Everybody's competing to try to get this belt. Or Nestle's just carving dudes up so nobody can win. It was awesome. Shout out to producer Dan I wish I could have played for producer Dan when I was growing up. That's what I'd tell my 18-year-old self. Go back and play for producer Dan.
All right. We'll see you, fellas.
All right, boys.